Oh, right. So even if we weren't before, we've got it recorded somewhere else.
Yeah. Excellent.
Right. Well, there's only 27, we're 3 minutes away from when we said we'd go live. And I'm going to have a look at, see how many people are watching us from the event page, because I think that will give us some stats. So we'll know whether we need to wait for any more people to join us. But
I can see that there are 38 people.
That's good. Oh,
38 people, but I can't see any comments from here.
Oh, okay.
I don't know how I'm going to be able to.
Right, I've got another screen, so
you can see 40 people live now.
Wow.
Hi everybody, thank you for joining us.
Right, your events. And I will see whether I can see comments. Start discussion. Is that what it? No, that's not. No. I'm wondering where the comments would be, because I can't see them. That's odd, isn't it? I think we're both in the dark. I don't think either of us can actually see the comments, which is interesting. I could see them earlier, but I think I can see them when this is shared. Oh, here we go. I think I've got one that's shared now. Yes. Yes, I can see, but I don't think it's. I think it's only on my. Oh. Well, bear with us. We're
8 people live.
Right. Shall we get going? And dogs drinking in the background.
Yeah, I'm just going to see if I can see it on a shared post. Then perhaps, because I want people to be able to ask questions. You know.
Yeah, would be good, wouldn't it? Are you all right? What are you doing? Stop.
It says I'm playing up because you're working.
Yep. Are you all right? Are you okay? You're good. Right.
Because you're working.
Yeah.
Okay, right. I can see. I've got comments. I've got comments.
Oh, gosh, they're probably saying
Charlotte says it has to be said that Beverley's background is the coolest thing ever. I mean, it's just so cool, isn't it? I'm loving that. Zoe says, hi, honey.
They're probably saying
Charlotte said.
Oh, I think I just had feedback on here, because I had it on 2 screens. So I had the older one.
Have you got it up there?
Yeah, I've got rid of the second one.
Patricia Owen says hi. Hayley says hi. Joanne Clayton, hi. Tracy Wood, hello. Lindsay Mason, good evening, ladies. Good evening, Lindsay. John Robertson says here. 50 people live.
Well, I think that's it. And it's exactly 7:30. It's almost as if we've planned this, isn't it? That's amazing.
Super.
Right. Well, shall we kick off?
Let's.
Right. Well, the reason for calling this meeting was going to be before the February the 1st update came through, because DEFRA, in their wisdom, have released some new guidance notes for the breeding license in England. And we'd seen an early version of it and gone through it in great detail and fed back to them all the points that we thought were still ambiguous or just plain wrong, because it was quite funny, wasn't it? Because there was several mentions of fish and horses, which we thought possibly, if it was possible to get the wrong species in this document, it was entirely possible that some other bits were copied and pasted and were in the wrong place. But unfortunately, we got a very stuffy, boring response back that said, these are only the tweaks. There'll be a full revision in 2023. And we will, DEFRA will be listening to feedback via the various stakeholders, which made me think, well, if this version was already due to them sitting down with all the stakeholders, perhaps we need a place at that table for people who love dogs and breed them. Because I'm thinking they're sitting down with people who, when they read that document that we've just all looked at, which we'll give you a link so you can go look at it on the government website. There's so many times when I've read it and gone, really? Is that meant to be in there? Does it read the way it's meant to? And I don't think legislation should be ambiguous. I think we've got to have it clear, and we've got to get back to, well, why have we got it in the first place? What's the purpose of this legislation?
And it is ambiguous. You know, you and I spent, I don't know, what was that session? 3 hours, maybe even 4 on Zoom that afternoon, literally having printed off the 35 pages, sitting with a highlighter pen, page by page, going through it. And on several of the points, you read it one way and I read it another. And we sing from pretty much the same hymn sheet. So that's quite frightening.
Yeah. And when we've got every different local authority reading it and interpreting it, and this was meant to be halfway through revision, that's meant to have, they must have had loads of feedback from people saying, it's really hard to work out exactly what this means. They haven't changed a lot. When you go through what has changed this time, some of the things are odd. What would be your standout change that you've spotted so far?
I think I think we'll talk about the differences in I want to say classification around whether or not you need a license. The first couple of pages where they're really delving into whether you're in or out of scope. Let's leave that out of this for a little minute, and let's keep it a little bit light-hearted. I think the bit about the needing to have a dog catching pole is probably my favourite bit. I have to say that's my best bit.
Yeah. And muzzles in an assortment of sizes.
Yeah, super. Wonderful. That's really useful, and I think that I can imagine that was painstakingly thought out, and at the same time, the comments and the sections that they've copy and pasted from other legislation regarding fish are still in there, and I just find it really. I find the irony. It's a shame. I'm laughing, but actually it's I think it is almost comical in places, because actually if I need to keep a dog catching pole here, then it really is a sorry state of affairs. They don't need a dog catching pole. They can just call my dogs by their name, and they will come. They can just approach them with a lead and they will go to them.
It does show a lack of understanding that we're dealing with sentient beings that are our friends, and that the sort of people that should be breeding dogs shouldn't be breeding from dogs that they have to approach with a pole.
Quite.
These are your own dogs in your own home or in your own kennels. I think this is where the problem lies, is that it seems to be being approached from almost a farming perspective. And I think this is a health and safety thing, that they're wanting to protect the staff from these dogs.
But if a dog has got itself into such a state of anxiety that it can only be handled with a pole, I mean, really, if a dog is in that state, should it ever be being bred from? I think I would really be arguing that the behavioural records and the assessments that we're now being expected to keep, which I agree with, are being adhered to, and people are actually looking at a dog's state of anxiety. If it's got to the point where it needs a pole to be caught, that is quite worrying. That was more than quite worrying. It's very worrying. So there's that element to it. I think there are some things in there that are great. I think there are some elements regarding health and welfare. I think that there are some standards that they are setting regarding health testing, which I think is fabulous. And I think that's exactly the moves that should be being made in light of the current, topical stuff that's going on in Norway. I think we do need to be insisting on correct health testing, and they're clearly moving towards that. Obviously, let's get the elephant in the room out the way. Obviously, from the educational piece, I'm over the moon, because I believe that breeders should be educated in what they do. And if you're already breeding and you already know what you're doing, that's wonderful. From my point of view, I would want to prove I can do what I do, and I would want a certificate to say, here I am, I'm wonderful, here I'm dedicated, I am invested in, I want to be considered to be a professional at what I do. And so the education piece for me is great. And for those people who are new to breeding and getting into it, there's loads you can learn and loads that you can achieve. And you know, education is the most powerful weapon to change the world. And what we want to try to do is change the future world for the dogs that are in it, isn't it? And that's what I think the licensing legislation is trying to do. It's trying to protect, yeah, but I don't think they quite get it right. So
No.
I think they go overboard. So I think there'll be questions, and I'd obviously like to hear people's points of view around the overboard with the record keeping. I mean, this elimination chart where we have to monitor every poo that our dogs do. I mean, really? Can we not just monitor if there's a problem? Do we, you know, can we not record if there's a problem? Okay, I get that. But do we need to monitor every single wee and poo our dogs do?
And is that bean counting? Well, not bean counting, poo counting. You actually keep a log of when they've done it, and exactly how much. Do we have to
keep a log? Forgive the pun. You know, it's just like it is. It's comical. There's parts of it that just I can't help but laugh. But so, what for you? What were the bits of it for you that stuck out?
Well, what got me was we sent a 10-point letter to DEFRA of 10 major ambiguities that needed explanation, and in the revision. And I was expecting 10 answers to come back. I mean, because I went through the press office, and the press office are normally absolutely bang on. But then they obviously put it back to the department, and they just came back and said, well, actually, not all of those things that you've highlighted, those 10 ambiguities, are things that have changed. So it's just things that are ambiguous generally about the legislation. They're not things that we've changed this time, which then begs the question, why didn't you change them then? Because if you know they're already ambiguous, why not in the revision make them clearer? Yeah. And I suggest that the reason they're not clearer is people don't really know what they should say.
I would agree. And
I also think they're worried that if they change it midway, and some people have been adversely affected by their local authorities' interpretation, and we know some have, how do one do that? And will it be very litigious? Because if somebody's had to rehome their older dogs, or if someone's had to build or get planning consent, or have move to get out of that area, and it's later found that was just an incorrect interpretation of the legislation.
That's horrendous.
It's a bit of a mess, and I can understand perhaps why the civil servants were perhaps going, put that on that.
Yeah. We're not going to touch that hot potato.
Yeah, but I think with a run-in, if we could actually park the whole thing and just write it from scratch, because when somebody's rewritten an essay about 100 times and it doesn't make any sense anymore, that's what this feels like. It feels like there are probably people working on it that never worked on the version 4 times ago or 3 times ago, and they can't quite understand why that bit's in there, but it's in there. And I think we need to get to the bottom of what were they trying to achieve by these bits of legislation, because I think that very often it's trying to, they've had a set of objectives that when they first had a license, there were very few small breeders who it would apply to, because the outer scope was much broader. And they've made many more people now in scope, regardless of how you interpret whether you're in scope. And now all of a sudden, all these details really don't scale down very well. And
they don't scale down very well. So for example, I have to keep a transport log of my, because I am a licensed breeder, so I have to keep a transport log of my dogs every time they go out in the car, which can sometimes be 3 or 4 times a day.
Oh dear.
You know, because my dogs do go for walks off of my property, you know, contrary to popular belief. They're not all, you know, locked in kennels 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
And they actually do this thing called going to the park, you know, and that's the problem, you know, the license. And whilst I appreciate that writing guidance and legislation to cover the whole breadth of a subject is very, very difficult, I think that this particular topic is so broad that one license cannot fit all. And yes, there are differences within the license, you know, talking about home breeding and talking about kennel establishments. It does break it down within the guidance, it does, but I don't think it actually takes it far enough. And you know, before we even get into that, in scope or out of scope, right? In scope or out of scope, you know, why do they even need to make it that complicated in the first instance? Because, you know, the general consensus is if you breed a litter of puppies and sell any of them, you need a license.
Yeah,
that's it. That's all. That doesn't need to be any other complicated. Doesn't need to be 3 litters, £1,000, HMRC, profit, non-profit. It doesn't even need to be 2 pages of writing. Is it not that if you breed a litter of puppies and sell any of them, that you are in scope?
Yeah, but I think it'd be nice to have something that is like an entry level for anyone who breeds even 1 litter in their lifetime, that is just sensible, just a sensible, not onerous, just something that says you are publicly declaring you're doing it. So you're not hiding it, you're doing it. And there may be random inspections on percentage of them, because in reality, the local authority could not, there's 10 million dogs in Britain. I mean, you just think, divide that by 10, that, you know, even, or divide, you know, imagine there's 10 puppies in a litter. So that's 1 million litters. How on earth are we going
You're never going to police? It's not policeable. It's not policeable. But if it was a permit to breed, or you went on a register of breeders, and the licensing inspector that came round was qualified to deal with dogs, and not just food establishments or public houses
or indeed sex shops. Talking to a lady that did both dog breeding and sex shops, which I thought were not a mixture.
Well, I don't know, I can kind of see some correlations. But you know, like, I think that if we're talking about the application of it, then the application of the guidance needs to be done by people that are qualified, knowledgeable, experienced, people that can actually tell the difference between a dog that's happy, a dog that's not happy, that knows the difference between one breed to another.
Yes, I mean, I think that's the problem at the moment, that there's so little money in it for the local authorities, because it's in the statute that they can't make money from the license. So it's a non-profit thing. So it's no wonder they squash it into something else, because they've got there's nothing to fund this, to do it in an imaginative way.
Yeah, and I don't think, you know, I don't think that very many of us would have a problem with it if they did make profit from it, if it was done properly. Yeah. None of us would have a beef about paying for the license. I've got no problem paying license, paying tax, paying whatever we've got to pay. We pay our dues. We're members of society and we have to contribute, and that's fine. But let's be contributing to something that is of value,
that we're proud of. That doesn't exist just to make it difficult for people to breed. It actually makes it difficult for people to breed badly. Yes. And it encourages people to do it really well. And I think at the core of that, we need an acceptance from DEFRA that the ideal is the smaller scale breeder that has human interaction with their dogs and gives them a life, and gives mum a life outside of breeding. And that those are the absolute cream, and that we need something that allows them to continue, where at the moment they're all, are we in scope, are we not in scope? There's this, some of the local authorities telling them definitely not, if they're only having 1 litter a year. A few yards down the road, they are in scope. in that local authority. So there's that, not quite sure whether they're safe not being licensed or whether they should be licensed. And then if they're in an area where people aren't very nice about breeding dogs, they can have the book thrown at them. I mean, we had people that have applied for a license and ended up with a planning fight on their hands, even though there's been no neighbour complaints, and having to rehome their older dogs, which is heartbreaking.
It is heartbreaking, and that is one of the concerns that's arisen from these changes, is that all of the dogs in the household now have to be listed on the licence.
Yeah, and if that is just a change now from February the 1st, if that's going to happen from now, this moment onwards, they needed to give people years of warning of that, because now people are overnight are breaking their license because they weren't counting their oldies.
No. And actually what they're going to do is they're going to force people, if that is indeed as it's interpreted, they're going to force people into a situation where the older dog, on an economic basis, people will not be able, people that are breeding and it's their income, they're not going to be able to keep their older bitches because they're going to take up a lot of space on the license. People are going to be dumping older dogs left, right and centre. Some people because they don't care, because that's just how they are. And some people are going to be brokenhearted over having to make some choices that are really, really avoidable.
And I think some of those people who choose then not to breed because they can't part with their older dogs are exactly the sort of people that we want. We need dogs.
Exactly the people that are going to be forced out of breeding as a result of this are the cream.
Are the good boys. Yeah. So that was the kind of idea, was that we need to unite the good small breeder, the ones that want to be proud of what they do and love what they do, and we need to get that voice represented to DEFRA, so that the next version of this license both is good for dogs and is good for people who love dogs and is good for, well, makes it some clarity for the general public, because at the moment we've got a real mishmash of breeders that are all getting licensed star ratings, and they really don't equate to, well, it's not like the star rating you get for the hygiene in a restaurant, which is really clear. You just go, if you've got a 1-star, order a takeaway at your peril. 5-star, they're doing things properly. Dog breeding, it doesn't work like that. There are some people, and with that chap we were speaking to with Labradoodles, I think it was, has been told by his local authority that the way they've interpreted it, if you don't register your dogs with the Kennel Club, you can't be a 5-star breeder. And that means that every crossbreed, unless it's first cross, can't register with the Kennel Club, which is crazy because you can register with the activity register. But this council has made it a firm judgment that that does not constitute registration. So no matter what he does, he will never get a 5-star.
And this is a guy who has dogs that are health tested way beyond what is required, temperament and behaviourally assessed. He knows the genetics. He's absolutely lives and breathes Labradoodles, which, let's face it, have been being bred for many, many years.
Yeah. But it also,
and still he can't get the recognition in terms of the stars on his license that he should have.
And yet down the road, an unmanned kennels overnight that may have CCTV, and apparently that's enough overnight. A check once a night, where if you write it in the book that you did it, is enough to get you high star rating, which to the general public,
and overnight, the hours of overnight are 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. So you can lock your dog in a kennel from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. the following morning. 14 hours.
Yeah. I don't think there should be any stars for that type of kennel. And
I don't be allowed. It shouldn't be a thing. You shouldn't be able to do that. No, you shouldn't be locked up for 14 hours.
No, and I think that's something we need to. I was talking to a breeder the other day. I think she's listening in. Who's come from the farming side of things, knows about licensing for farming, and said some really interesting things about how standards are set for like intensive milk farms and other things. And I think really those intensive dog farms need their own license and their own people going into checking, because I don't think that's the same type of dog breeder as the sort of person that the public consider to be good breeders. And if you want to be a farm breeder, there should be a higher criteria that they follow that's probably more expensive, because at the moment, I couldn't believe this. It costs the same if you've got one dog or 200 for licensing. Is that correct? Is that really true?
Well, I think that there isn't a set fee. I think councils can have an individual fee. You have to go to your own local authority and find out what they're charging, but that council, I don't believe within each council they have different tiers of pricing. No, so I think the council sets it, and then then what you've said is correct, but between council to council the fees can be slightly different.
Oh yeah, so each council sets their own, but I've heard people say that if you're only having one litter, the costs of the vet coming out, all those other things, it can be sort of £700 to get your license.
Easily.
And if you're only having one litter, that's a huge amount for it to cost. Whereas if you are a massive breeder who's breeding,
lots and lots and lots and lots
tens of litters
puppies
a month, it's a drop in the ocean. And even if it is slightly higher, even if it's a smidge, but the fact is there needs to be the correct fee for the right situation and the right amount of I think there needs to be some training that shows the people who are coming into people's homes that what's most important is the quality of life of the dogs that they're meeting. That are the dogs actually loved, and are these people striving to do their very best to rear happy, healthy dogs? Are they keeping in touch for the whole of life? Is this something that isn't just a money-making scheme? And if so, this is where you get your 5 stars. Is if you tick every one of their boxes. So doing all your health tests, doing the best you can socialization-wise, using those first 8 weeks to bring up puppies that are going to easily transition into being really good family pets, and then keep, not changing your mobile phone number as soon as their litters sold, as some dodgy ones do, and keeping in touch for the whole of life. And these are then dogs that don't cost the council money by ending up in council pounds, because these dogs never end up bouncing out of again and again and again being
absolutely because at the end of the day, puppies that have been bred with thought and consideration, then gone on to be raised correctly, and then puppies that are assessed as individuals and homed to the correct homes, breeders knowing what to look for in a puppy and then matching that puppy with the owner, those puppies don't end up back in rescue. They don't develop behavioural issues, or they're far less likely to develop behavioural issues, and they don't then, as you say, bounce around from rescue to rescue when they get to 9 months old and they're a little bit difficult and they're not cute anymore. But it is almost as though elements of this particular license, I don't want to use the word punish, but I want to say that it makes it very difficult for a home breeder, a breeder with, I don't know, sub 10 dogs, to just operate in an enjoyable fashion. Even going to spend so much of the day completing charts and logs and record sheets of things that really aren't, they're just detracting from the time spent enriching and socializing the dogs. It's forgive the pun, it's barking up the wrong tree in places, and I understand, and I don't want to completely slate it, because there are elements of it that I think are an improvement. I do believe that if you're breeding puppies, you should have a license. Let's say I do believe that it should be a policeable thing. There should be a register, a permit, a license, you know, let's say, but I do think there should be some sort of official register, let's say, of people who are breeding. Okay.
Yeah, I think there should be transparency. But
yeah,
transparency, not so that every member of the public can find out where you live.
No, not at all. No,
but something that makes it a professional, legitimate thing to do properly.
Absolutely.
So it's something to be proud of rather than to be embarrassed about.
Absolutely.
And I think it should be something that everybody who loves dogs should care about. Never mind whether you're a breeder or a puppy buyer. I think the way that the dogs are brought into this world have a massive effect on every other element of the dog world. And if we were not to encourage the good people to breed, we would end up with the puppy farmers just breeding more and more and more. And the danger is, if it becomes too easy for the big breeders to deal with what is a huge amount of admin, and not very much the actual touchy-feely stuff with the dogs, what sort of world are we going to have? We're going to have dogs that are reared in kennels where the only thing they learn is that no one comes when they bark, that you can pee and poo in your own space, because there's no
factory line. It just becomes a factory line. It does become a factory line. But
shush.
I think that I think there could be 2 different types of license. I think, you know, I think there probably could be 3 types of license, to be honest. I think there could be large commercial establishments. I think there could be breeders that breed in the home, in the actual home, or there could be breeders that breed from home but have, you know, the hybrid version, you know, an annex or a kennel, you know, that is part of their home, part of their business. You know, I think it could be broken down into a little bit more detail, and I think it needs to be. I think it needs to be more specific, so that people fall into these categories that can then be you know, monitored properly. The licensing can be written appropriately to where they fall within those categories. And I think the behavioural piece and the health testing piece applies to all. It doesn't matter whether you're a big breeder or a hobby breeder. It doesn't matter if you're only breeding 1 litre a year or 100 litres a year. You should be breeding from health tested stock. You should be breeding from stock that is temperamentally sound and behaviourally diverse, so that they are able to cope with being parents and raising puppies. And the people doing it should have the welfare needs to be at the heart of it. But the application of the other stuff needs to be relevant to the environment, the person, the license holder. It needs to be relevant, and so much of it isn't relevant. And I think that's the problem really with it. Yeah. Should we have a look at some of the comments?
Oh, go on. I can't see them. So.
Oh, there's loads of them. Right, let's have a little look. Tanya Stevens said, if older dogs and pets are to be included, do the records have to be kept for them too? Yes, they do. Brian is saying that he's seriously considering whether or not he can continue breeding.
Oh dear.
Rianne says the same. She'd rather give up breeding before giving up her dogs. Sarah says that she can only have 8 dogs. The council told me to get rid of my older dogs if I want more. And then there's lots of people replying saying, yeah, me too, I agree.
Yeah, I do think the country shouldn't be bringing this in with no warning. It's just outrageous.
Jackie Dodds is watching. She says she's a licensing officer, and she says that planning may not be an issue. It depends on prime use of a premises. So presumably that is, so if the prime use of the premises is somebody's home versus it being a business, maybe that's worked out on a meterage basis. Jackie, if you could let us know how that's worked out. Is it worked out on a meterage, how much of the home is for the business and how much of it would be for living in. Be interesting. Kerry says yes, she had to list all of her dogs on last year's license, 4 retired, and yes, had to keep records for them all. Patricia Owen is suggesting that maybe set up a representative body that negotiates with DEFRA.
Well, that would be wonderful. I think I'll share at the end a survey link that's asking whether people would like to join up to a pressure group. And whilst I mention it, tailwise.com is very keen to help protect the small breeder, because we just know that, well, that's the ideal. It's the perfect way to bring up a puppy, is to have it reared in the home and then have someone who's there to really help you if you get stuck, and if your life changes in a way you can't predict, then there is a safety net. And because all the small breeders that I deal with, they really do feel like it's one of their family, and you can't get this from reading the license. It's the license is still hooked up with it being a commodity rather than a sentient being, and so many other bits of legislation now have brought this in, that they understand the dog is in a special category. It's the emotional attachment is so enormous. To ask people to get rid of their older dogs is shocking. It's shocking. That they should. I mean, are they going to come and tell us that, you can't have this council house unless you get rid of some of your children? I mean, how can the local authority tell you to get rid of a member of your family? It's just, that needs to be undone pretty quickly. But I can see why they've done it, though. They've probably done it.
I can, because there's unscrupulous people. We're all suffering at the hands of the people that are not honest, because there are people saying, "Oh no, I'm not breeding from that one. It's a pet.
Yeah,
we're not breeding from that one. That belongs to my brother." Yeah. That's why their hand is forced in one way, but the knock-on effect is that it affects everybody else in a really detrimental fashion. Yeah. Joanne Clayton is suggesting that the fee could be pro rata, which might not be a bad idea. She says that she doesn't agree with what's going on in Ireland in terms of the large facilities breeding and then shipping them in.
Yeah, there was a little bit in the guidance notes which I queried, which they didn't come back and explain. But it says that you're allowed to sell your puppies to someone who owns a pet shop in Wales.
Yeah, that was bizarre.
I'd hoped they were going to come back and say, "Oh, you're just not reading that correctly." But apparently, it's still allowed that you can sell dogs to a pet shop in Wales, even though it's against the law in England to sell dogs through pet shops. That, to me, is it's very unjoined up, isn't it?
Claire Stewart makes a really interesting point. This is regarding health testing. She's saying, until the Kennel Club sets satisfactory results as a requirement of registration, we're just going to keep going around in circles with a lot of this stuff. Interesting point. But
I have to say, having worked at the Kennel Club many years ago, I know why they don't do that. Because if they'd done it decades ago and made it like in the Swedish Kennel Club, where you have to health test to be in the system, and there is no outside of the system because they are everything. There are no alternates in Sweden. If they were to do that tomorrow, and we always asked for it, but the reality is a lot of people would stop using the Kennel Club, and they already have eroded the number of dogs that are on the register, and that gene pool will wither and die, and you'll end up with no one place where you can find all the records. So I think what you have to do is you have to accept that they're like debrets. It is a record of who's mum and who's dad. And now that we've got it online, that you can check the health tests against it.
Yeah.
And also, there's not a complete parity on health testing as well. I mean, some of the DNA tests, it's really clear, carrier, affected, or clear. But with the structural ones, for hip dysplasia, for example, the latest research shows it's only 20% genetic and there's 80% environmental. So you can't just say, no, that's the end of that line, because it could be, in Sweden, they're much more, they take a longer term view on these things. They move the boundaries. We'd have an awful lot of catching up to do that here. And I just don't think the Kennel Club are in the position that they are to be able to bring that in, because now that there's so many dogs that are outside of the Kennel Club.
Well, I was going to say, a lot of the comments that are coming in are saying, like, so many of the dogs now are not registered with the Kennel Club. When you think about the volume of poodle crosses and other crossbreeds that are gaining popularity, there are so many of them now that fall outside of the Kennel Club's registry, full stop. So, I think the Kennel Club should, how easy it would be for them to do it, but they need to embrace crossbreeding, and they need to support it for the welfare on the basis of the welfare of the dogs that are being produced.
It would be helpful, even if it was a separate register.
Yeah, completely. There could be a crossbreed register. That's fine. But
something to verify the health test results in the same way for pedigree dogs. Just somewhere to park the information, that's
just so the information was there, so that we we could be clear on what health testing was needed for cockapoos and what health testing was needed, what applies to people that are breeding those, because that then becomes a hugely grey area, and punishing those people for saying because you can't register your dog, you can't get a higher tier license. Well, that's rubbish, because there are plenty of people who are breeding pedigree dogs that are not correctly health testing and correctly registering, and they're still managing because they can come up with a KC piece of paper. I mean, it's just what difference does that actually make? It's not relevant, it's not right, it's not correct, and it doesn't transcribe. And so, and this is what undermines the legislation, isn't it? Because it's not applicable in so many circumstances. The actual practicality of it undermines the gravitas of the whole document. And it's such a shame.
And that's the thing. We need, just like we need a strong Kennel Club, we need a strong breeder's license. Because it's very easy to blame everything on the Kennel Club. It's very easy to blame everything on the license. But the fact is, the dog world is all connected, and every bit of it fits together. And it's going to take more than one body to sort this out. We need everyone to pull together and get a better
there's
system.
Thousands of us. This affects, if everybody that breeds a litter of puppies and sells one needs a license, it affects every single one of us.
And if we can make it a good thing rather than just like a tax, because the dog license was in the end hopeless, because it just didn't mean anything. It was just it became just something that was outdated. If we're going to have something in that says if you want to breed, you have to, wouldn't it be great if you could actually get it all to line up? Because at the moment we've got a chip database. Well, we've got 17 or 14 or I don't know how many this week databases that are taking information, but that isn't good enough for the license. You think if the chip database could be correlated somehow or other with your breeder's license, so that when you register a litter, because I think that's in the new license thing, that you have to change the chip into the name and address of the new owner. Now,
most of us are already doing that.
But there's still a huge number of dogs that get picked up who've got no details at all, which is totally pointless. I mean,
then how many of them are picked up, and when the owners have gone on, and the owners have changed their address, and the owners have changed their phone numbers, and they don't update but it's always finger wagging at the breeder.
But I think when the National Dog Wardens Association, again, a fantastic body that wasn't actually listened to when legislation was being drawn up, when we got microchipping. They were saying that when people paid to get the microchip and that it was just their own volition, there was no law. 40% of dogs that were picked up that were chipped had no details on the database.
No.
Even people who were voluntarily doing it didn't put the information on the database because somehow they thought it was magical that they didn't need to. Lots of people don't really understand. They don't remember. They think, oh, well, maybe the vet put it in. When I change my address at the vet's, they'll update my microchip. And they don't know that it's something that
they have to do.
Who can remember which database, if they've only got one dog, how do they remember what database their dog's chip's on? I mean, it's pretty hard. So it's a bit of a clunky system, but wouldn't it? There's one of those 17 databases that is ready to set it up, where they would talk direct to councils, so that when somebody registered 3 litters in a year, say, they would send an email to the breeder to say, you should be licensed, and they'd also send an email to the licensing people, so that it would trip something. So you'd have another arm of people keeping an eye on things, so that if people just because
what will happen is all those people that want to keep themselves out of scope and out of view won't use that registry.
Yeah, well, there is that, but whatever system we had, imagine if all of the chip databases had the same bit of software, so that you couldn't, all of them were connected, because they should be, because that's something that should
be one single database.
So if there was something that, so that to be a breeder, you have to agree to, just like cars have got registration numbers, something so simple as that. It's like a DVLA for dogs, so that when you breed your litters, they're in a system and they're going through, and you can't be invisible. Even if you're only just making 1 litter in your lifetime, there needs to be like a temporary breeding permit or something that says, I'm not doing it illicitly. I'm doing my best to, and if it's an accident, that it's recorded, so that people who are just keep having accidents are you've given so many strikes and then you're out. But something that makes it a level playing field, no matter where you are in the country, so that everybody is abided by the same rules.
And I think that this guidance has tried to do that, in terms of trying to address this in scope and out of scope thing, but I think they just tie themselves up with words. There's just so many words, and it's like, we don't need all of these words. It's just not helpful, because it just leaves so many grey areas. It leaves it so wide to interpretation. Before we get into talking about the nitty-gritty of the actual thing, people are spending agonizing amounts of time trying to work out whether they need a license or not.
Yeah. And wouldn't it be great to have somebody from DEFRA on this call that we could say, please, can you just say definitively, what does that mean? That those
what does
two
it mean?
bits, because they are, it's like apples and bananas. You can't have one with the two things
the other.
Crazy.
So that's my point. Just have a sentence that says, if you breed puppies and sell them, you need a license.
Yeah,
that's it. We don't need to then go into how many litters, how much money, blah, 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 blah. That isn't what's relevant.
Yeah. Or Scotland, haven't they gone for, if you breed 5 litters, you need a license? Now that is a lot of puppies.
Yeah.
And I suggest it means that they didn't really want to go out and visit anybody, because I suspect there'd be huge distances involved to do those trips. But 5 would seem a little bit too many. But could there be a thing that if you only have 1 litter a year, you voluntarily register in some way, but there's no official license?
I think the danger with that is saying, well, because you've only bred a few puppies, they don't need the protection that is afforded to dogs that are under a licensed breeding establishment. And so I just have a little bit of a worry about that.
What is the protection that you get?
Well, it's right of access. So speaking as an ex licensing officer, I used to be a licensing officer many moons ago, so I'm not current, so don't question me on the current stuff because it's 25 years ago. God, it was 25 years ago.
Yeah,
that's scary.
You obviously were a child when you were doing that.
I was a child. I was fresh out of school. I could tell you some stories, but we won't get onto that. But we'll save that for another night. But I've completely lost my train of thought. Right of access is the point,
right?
Okay? If a premises is licensed, they have the right to turn up and inspect, right? Which gives the animals in there a level of protection, right? Because I can just rock up and get in, okay? And so that affords them a level. So if you're saying, well, you're only breeding 1 litter, so you don't need a license, does that make, that could be 10 puppies? Does that mean that those 10 puppies don't deserve that right of access and that right of protection in the same way as if you breed 5? So I don't have an issue with saying if you breed puppies, you need to be registered, permitted, licensed, whatever label we want to put on it. I don't have a problem with saying if you breed dogs, you need a license, because if you drive a car, you need a license.
Yeah,
right? I've got no issue with that. We just accept that as a thing. If I drive a vehicle, I need to have a driving license in order to do it. Totally get that, that's fine. So I think it should be the same for dogs, but how that is then broken down and dealt with, that's a different thing.
But my devil's advocate bit here, because I do agree that we need a good license, but at the moment I think that a license that doesn't have a problem with an unmanned kennel overnight,
well, I mean, that's just a joke.
That makes a mockery of the protection, because what protection is there?
No, that's just absolutely outrageous, because for a piece of legislation that is trying to promote welfare, it contradicts itself in that one statement. Yeah,
so it needs to clean its act up, because it's like having in the driving license that it's all right to drink when you drink a lot of I don't know, vodka, but you can't drink beer. And that is a fundamental flaw in this license, that we're saying it's acceptable to automatic feed, to all those other things to do with battery farming. That's it. They won't get it.
But that's where the crossovers, you see, this is the problem. This is where the crossovers come in, because what DEFRA normally license are farming activities. Okay, and so you can see that the way it's been written is from a position of their knowledge of they're applying farming stuff to it, aren't they? Which is what gets our backup, because we don't want to be associated with or considered to be, use the word farming and everybody goes, I don't puppy farm,
somebody said, what's the definition of a puppy farmer? Someone who breeds less often than I do. More often than I do. Sorry, God, I ruined the joke there. But it's a lot of people call people out for being puppy farmers. I'm talking about people who really are commercial, really looking at it from a business point of view. They're really not, and not too
the money is
where they get their dogs from.
The money is what's more important. That's what the point. Right, should we go back to these comments and see what people are saying?
Yes, go on.
Lynn Hamilton says, I agree, 1 litter a year should not be licensed like the bigger breeders, but it's impossible to police the amount of people who breed on such a small scale.
Yeah. It could be a voluntary thing where maybe we get one of the big charities to go and check on a sporadic basis to people who are doing it on a small scale. Because
Shelley says what happens is that mother, brother, uncle and aunt all have 1 litter to get round it. That's how they get. If you just say 1 litter, that's a very good point. What happens is you say, well, I've had my litter, my husband's had 1 litter, my son's had 1 litter. That's how they're getting around it.
That seems to be the case, that you need to maybe do it zoned on a dwelling rather than a person.
And Patricia Owen, a very good suggestion actually, could be a self-certification basis, work with photographic or Zoom evidence to save costs to local authorities. That could be something that we could look at in this tech era that we're living in.
Yeah, well, that's what we kind of do with Tailwise. When a new breeder signs up, we do a Zoom call where we get to know them, and it's not a tick box. It's we do get lots of information, but we also talk to them about what happens to mum when they're not having a litter. What sort of care do they give to the puppies? What do they? So you get to know them, and I just feel that that's for a tiny breeder is probably somebody saying it's a genuine person. We've checked their identity. We've seen the dogs in situ, and they look like they live there. Because I've done screenings where I've seen dogs that the dog behavior wrong.
Yeah,
they've been brought in for this video.
Yeah,
the dog's never been on that floor before, and things just don't add up. And it really is very hard to get through a Zoom, and you'd have to be a tremendous actress to get through a Zoom where you
over the wall,
that you get the feeling. Just people who dogs,
you do, but there
people.
you go. You live and breathe dogs, and you have done all your life. So you are looking at a dog that's walking on a floor thinking that dog's never walked on that floor before.
Yeah,
because you inherently know that. Okay, you look at a dog sitting by somebody's legs and you think that dog's not comfortable in that position, that something just doesn't feel right. Well, if you're a licensing officer and you haven't had dogs in your life, and you don't have that
skill set,
we have a skill set that we're not even consciously aware of it. We're assessing a situation on a level that people who are not dog orientated, I know they're weird people, but those weird people that are not dog orientated, they don't have that skill set because they don't recognize the body language. They've just never been exposed to it before. And so, and in the there's a second set of guidance that has actually been released at the same time, which is for licensing officers.
Right.
Okay. And in it says that they should have an appropriate level 3 qualification in order to license premises, which is a fantastic step in the right direction. And I believe, and don't quote me on this because it might not be 100% accurate, but I believe that there is a specific local authority level 3 specifically for licensing officers. It is a qualification that licensing officers can go and do. It's not the level 3 that we would think of, it's the level 3 specifically for them, which is fantastic. That is great. That is great.
I mean, as a career, that would be a fantastic job, because people who love dogs, who maybe done a behavior qualification
passionate about it.
This was also the problem with the dog wardens, that there was so much work was up there to do. And if you love dogs, it would have been a brilliant job. But it really needed the support of the hierarchy of the civil service to say, this is a skill. This is a set of skills that we need for these jobs. And that it becomes a career where dog lovers do the job because they do it a million times better. So it's not somebody who's being foisted onto it, but by, we need someone to do it.
You've got to have the skill set to meet the job description.
Yeah. And
we don't have a load of nurses advising the defence secretary on how to do his job.
No.
And so I don't see how we're not treated with the same regard. And I think there's lots of positive comments. We all need to stand together. We could all join in. Why don't we write our own piece of guidance and get that out there? Why don't the selling sites take more responsibility? Vicky's saying. Oh, Jackie Graves is asking, does Tailwise only deal with licensed breeders?
Well, we talk to every breeder about, are you licensed? And we explain the the system is full of ambiguity, and we ask them to talk to their local authority and find out whether they're in scope or not in scope. And we used to tell them about APS because they were prosecuting people who'd advertised, but I think that's stopped for a while now. But we very much sympathise that it is actually really confusing whether or not you are in or out of scope. But we ask them to protect themselves, to keep all the records they can, and to do their best to work within the system. But at the same time, it is, we hear so much of how different areas are dealing with this topic. So if we were to say you had to be licensed, when people have phoned up lots and lots of times asking for someone to come out to give them a license, and they won't come out because they only have 1 litter a year, what can you do to make them get a license? They've tried and they can't get one, because that authority just does not give licenses if you only breed 1 litter a year.
Yeah, completely. And that's, you know, before we wrap up tonight, I think that needs to be the message, because I appreciate that this changing guidance has caused anxiety, lots of anxious people. You know, you see everybody arguing on, you know, Facebook groups, and, you know, I think it means this, I think it means that. Actually, what you're seeing is a load of people that are really anxious. I just see anxious people around this whole topic everywhere. And I think, you know, I just want to say that if you do have questions of it, please don't look at what, you know, the Karens are saying, because Karen doesn't know your local authority and the inspectors within it, and Karen doesn't know your specific set of circumstances. And the actual, you know, the only sensible advice that should be being given out at this moment in time is to, you know, if you have concerns, if you have questions, write them down in an email, send them to your local authority, and get clarity for yourself.
Definitely.
That is the only way we can sit here and we can muse over it all, and we can discuss it, and we can all have our opinion. Ultimately, we will all be brought to bear by the laws that govern our country, and so we need to be towing the line and being appropriate, and that involves getting the correct information from the people who will license you. And that is the only real, you know, advice that you can be given. And in the meantime, Beverley has got a link to a group which we'd really like you to join. We'd really like you to stand up with us. You know, the proof is in the pudding, and we've got to march with our feet on this one, guys. We can't do it on our own. And it's just signing up to a well, actually, do you know what? I'll let Beverley talk about it, because Beverley set it up when she should have been resting and she should have been taking care of herself. Beverley decided that she would take on as you do.
Yes. I'm going to see if I can share a link. No, and I daren't press share screen because I did that and I have no idea.
Don't do that. We'll post it in the comments afterwards.
Okay. But if you've got a pen, it's usual https://bit.ly/unite for dogs, and that will bring you to this survey. But what it is, it takes you through, you know, what do you think about dogs? What do you think about the current license? What's it like in your area as well? So we're trying to plot a little bit of information as to whether certain things are happening in one borough but not in another. And it's totally, we won't use your information and identify you. So feel free to join in, just share a bit of information, just some very open questions about what you'd like to happen. And there's you just leave your email address and you'll be joined up to a group. And you don't have to, you know, make it your first priority and give everything else up that you're doing. We recognise that there are lots of organisations that are going to be fantastic at lobbying for change. We just want more people around that table that are talking sense for small breeders It's not a competition. You can be in more than one group at the same time. So let's get a lot of people telling DEFRA that there are small, good breeders that need protection, and that we need a license that we can be proud of, and that, well, can make their lives easier as well as the people in the local authorities. It should be a delightful job where they get to meet lovely people and are not feared, because I think at the moment there's a certain amount of trepidation about going through the license. It shouldn't be something you're scared of, because we should be on the same side. We should be doing it for the dogs, looking after the future of dogs and keeping them out of the hands of people who don't care. So that's my little, rallying talk.
Yeah, good.
It doesn't matter what type of dog you breed, or even if you don't breed, if you're a rescue and you're just fed up with getting filled up with ends of puppy farms that, when the wind changes and a type of dog suddenly goes up less popular, and all of a sudden they will get dumped, or the old dogs, and they've worn them out, get dumped, and then we get them scanned and we find that the much loved pets that were stolen so long ago. Should there be no stolen dogs in licensed kennels? I'm sorry, I don't think that should be acceptable. And at the moment we know that it happens. It shouldn't happen. No, we should know the provenance of the dogs that we buy, and we shouldn't have to share a license with the people who are doing it on a battery farm scale. No. And that should not be legal or licensed, in my opinion. But that's just my opinion.
At all. Yes.
And if anyone is small and I'm very short, so I shouldn't talk about size, but if you're a small breeder and you want some help to find really lovely, caring homes, it's totally free at Tailwise. So do sign up, because we're on your side. So do flock, do come in, and just the bigger we are, the bigger the voice, the bigger we can unite. But when you fill in that survey, you don't have to join Tailwise. We just want to know all the good breeders that are on the same side, so that we can say, look, we've got X number of people that we're representing the views of. So DEFRA will give us that seat at the table, and we'll start getting some sensible legislation when it's reviewed in 2023, and we can all breathe soundly at night. Well, I can sleep at any point at the moment. I'm so tired all the time. Sorry. Be kind to me, people. I'm not quite my best, but if this is one we've got to win. The next version has got to be more favourable to the small breeder. At the moment, I think we've been forgotten about a bit. Yeah, my own opinion. But and I'm no problem with people in local authorities who are doing this job. I think that there's lots of them are brilliant, but I think it is just not giving them a fair go at things with such an ambiguous piece of information to apply, and it's very hard for them to make their mind up what it should mean. So
I could not agree more. But listen, Beverley, you've been absolutely fantastic this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lots of wonderful comments, loads of people in agreement. Lots of really interesting conversations going on within the comments, people supporting one another, giving one another information, which is what it's all about. Because the other side of this coin for me is that in lots of breeding groups, you see an awful lot of bickering, and people, breeders, not being very generous of their time or knowledge, and are quite judgmental and harsh with one another. And you know what? We get judged by society already, guys. Yeah. We need to stand together on this. All of the bitching that I see on group, it just makes me so sad, because I just think, we're all in it together, and we all need to be supportive of one another, because that is how we get better. That is how we improve. That is how the dogs of our future become improved. And I really, really think that a united approach on this is what is needed. So let's stand tall and stand strong and make it count. We've got 12 months. It's not a long time for this stuff to happen. So we need to act, and we need to act sooner rather than later. So on that note, we're going to leave you. We're going to bid you farewell for the evening. Thank you ever so much for joining us. And like I say, in the comments on the live, we will post the link. If you can't find it, go over to Tailwise Breeders page, because it will be on there as well. Okay, so if you can't find it in the comments for whatever reason, go to Tailwise Breeders actual Facebook page and the link is on there. Okay, guys, thank you very much for this evening, and we will see you again.
Oh, and thank you, Rebecca, for all you're doing, because that's the thing, is that we need inspirational people in this sector who are going to just make it so that you can shine and be proud of yourself and stand up and it be something that you put on your CV. I'm delighted to be a new progressive breeder that does everything they can to give people the dog at the center of their lives. I mean, it is an uplifting thing to do, and if you do it well, society should support you, not close you down.
Exactly.
So let's unite on this, and let's keep dogs out of the hands of the people that don't understand them and
don't deserve them.
Yeah, let's look after the little puppy dogs, even the annoying cocker spaniel that barked all the way through this.
And the dog that's behind you that's running across the screen, that must be exhausted.
Going all night. I'm surprised it isn't a Springer Spaniel, actually, because that'd be, that reminds me of my old dog. But no. Oh, well, thank you, Rebecca. And
thank you.
Rebecca's got a puppy to look after, puppies to look after. So you've been very generous with your time. Thank you for breaking away from maternal duties. All right.
Thank you for having me. I'll see you again soon, guys.
Brilliant. All the best, everyone.
Bye-bye.
I can never find the off switch. This is me. Oh, did that work? No.